for it all. Huh, maybe take a ride on this pipe train. Hold it in, wait for it, here come the fall. Oh, your mind's been spun into a web. Is the spider gonna catch 'em all? Whew. Wheels and deals, a flickering screen. Got your card, ain't you please? Gotta click 'em all. To those that hate, dissolve it all. Oh, the light shines bright into the dark. It ain't too pretty, take a peek inside. Yearning to journey, sensational spark. Made it home in the mud. Gotta plant some seeds. Who's leading us here? Who's leading us there?
My name is Matt Hennigan, and I've been a board member since 2019. And I'm just thrilled to support this new chapter of the California Center. My day job is environmental sustainability, and I came to the organization through the Green Focus program. And that's important work, right? Climate change is the challenge of our time. And I work for the state, making state facilities more sustainable, trying to make the world a better place for future generations, right? I would argue that the best effort to impact ratio that you can find in this world-building project of ours is in youth engagement. Because opening a mind of a young person can create a lifetime of activism and work. The CalCenter gives young people the tools that they need to build a world that reflects their values. The generation gap has widened by the digital divide. We've added that to the generation gap, and we're living more and more of our lives online. Crossing that generation gap is more difficult than it's ever been. But given the challenges that we face, tapping into the energy, enthusiasm, and idealism of the youth has never been more essential. And I'm so deeply grateful that our organization has found the ideal leader to lead us into that new era in Clarissa LaGuardia. So can we get a round of applause for Clarissa? This event is all about bridging the old with the new. And I do want to take a moment to personally thank the staff, former and present, the board members, past and present, to bring this organization to what it is today. And most of all, I'd like to, we have the real honor of having James Moldavan, the founder of the organization, here with us tonight. So he's going to share some words and kind of really paint a picture of where the organization has been and what we have to look forward to in the future. So James, can you sure, Jim, come on up here.
So, he's not retired. I am retired. That's why I'm short. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, I ran the California Center. To think about it, I founded it in 1979. Can you believe that? And one of the things that really has made the California Center work was not the executive director, even though he is pretty good. It is all the people that were surrounding me, my staff. I didn't have a big staff, but I had, they were there. And then my interns, and even more than that, it was the 40,000 or more speakers from the professional community or the not so professional community who said, you know what, I've got something to say, and I'm going to say it to those kids, and those youth, and those youth are going to say it back to me, and they may not agree with me, but they came on the line, and said what they had to say. And these were legislators, they were lobbyists of all different sorts, they were activists, they were judicial officials, and they were so on and so forth. So as Clarissa LaGuardia, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment, gets ready for the new phase of the California Center, remember that it's not just her, although she's going to do a good job, I'm sure, but it's all of the people around her, the staff, the volunteers, the collaborators, the sponsors, and one by one, if you can get all those people on board and get them, and you do some programs that really get people thinking, oh my God, well, I didn't know that about that issue. And not only thinking about that issue, but going and doing something about it. And that's what I hope happens. And so I'm going to introduce Clarissa LaGuardia.
Hola, hola, buenas noches. Good evening, everybody. Do I have any hornets in the house? Singers up? Double? Well, my name is Clarissa LaGuardia. I'm the executive director of the California Center for Civic Participation, CalCenter for short. And I want to say thank you to Jim Moldavan. Thank you so much for having the foresight of founding CalCenter almost half a century ago. That's a long time, but we thank you for your service and for all the work that you put in. I'm going to need my glasses. I am approaching my 40s. Well, I am truly honored to stand before you today as we mark an important milestone in our organization's journey. First and foremost, I want to express my deep gratitude to each and every one of you for being here, for buying a ticket, for sponsoring our event, for supporting the revolution. Your presence here today sends a message that we're all united by a common goal. We all care about our young people. We want to help them. And before we jump in, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the efforts of our community partners, board members, Matt Hennigan, who spoke first, and we have CJ Lynch in the house back there. Say hi, CJ, one of our board members. I want to say thank you to our panelists who are here already, our youth volunteers, so you can see everybody that checked you in at the registration table, Sac State staff present, and our catering, Cielito Lindo, performers, the Mariachi Bonitas, our DJ, LG in the back, a hornet himself, and the entire community that made this event possible. I want to also take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors. Our visionary sponsors include Alcove, the James B. McClatchy Foundation, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, City of Sacramento Office of Community Engagement, Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member of District 3, Karina Talamantes, Five Star Bank, Mong for Innovating Politics, Lian Sakai, and Pro Youth and Families. I want to also acknowledge our community partners at large, which include AAPI Youth Rising, Courage California Institute, Community Engagement Center here at Sac State, BRI in Democracy, Fridays for Future SAC, League of Women Voters, Sacramento, Pro Youth and Families, Spectrum Networks, the Reclamation Project at 916. I want to especially thank the Reclamation Project and their youth leaders for, collaborating and advising us in planning this event. And now, the reason why we're here today, over the past decades, CalCenter has been leading the work of community and civic engagement, youth leadership development, and has served thousands of young people in California. And today, I'm excited to share with you how we are evolving to meet the challenges of tomorrow and how we are recommitting ourselves to shaping the future alongside with youth. As we gather here for CalCenter's Revolution, we share with you a new mission, one that is bold, actionable, and future-oriented. That mission is to activate, educate, and mobilize youth to shape their own future. Why? Because youth already are leaders in their own right. They have a voice. And we aspire to position ourselves as a convener and an ally to youth. We hope to spark their interest in civic engagement, provide them with tools and information to inspire them to take action. Our vision extends beyond this moment. We believe in a future where all youth are civic leaders and change makers. This new chapter is not just about a new logo. It's about a shift, a new approach, where our work is centered around young people's energy, creativity, and leadership. And as we embark in this journey, I am so proud of the collaboration and the work that we, CalCenter's leadership team, myself and the board, have done to reimagine our core values. Number one, we remain committed to the pursuit of equity and justice by being intentional about the opportunities we offer and the outreach and the necessary steps we need to reach those who need it the most. Number two, we believe civic engagement should center in humanity by focusing on the whole person and the issues that matter to youth. This requires listening to youth and what they have to say, and we value their lived experience. Number three, we focus on making real impact by dedicating our resources responsibly and mindfully on engaging youth the way they want to be engaged. Number four, knowledge is power. So we want to spark curiosity and model a growth mindset. And CalCenter recognizes youth have the valuable knowledge to share with us. Five, we believe in building community and the power of that. So we want to strengthen our relationships and collaboration to achieve more together. We want to foster a culture of collaboration across racial, linguistic, and generational boundaries. That's really important to me. We are committed to building a community for youth and for the adults that serve them. Six, we believe in play because civic engagement should be fun. So the evolution of CalCenter, when California Center was first established, our mission was clear: to empower communities across the state to engage in civic life and participate actively in our democracy. Over the years, we have seen the incredible impact of our mission, from voter education drives to youth leadership programs. We've witnessed the power of collective action and the difference it can make for people's lives. However, as the landscape around us changes, so must we.
So by having voting simulations through the form of VR, it's a really powerful way to bridge first-time voters to civic experiences.
Hi, I'm Mina. I'm a junior in high school, and I founded AAPI Youth Rising. Our mission is to take action by taking a series of small community projects in our various areas. We have over 150 chapters across the U.S., and we mainly focus on legislative action, raising our youth voices, and also education. And for education, we volunteer to teach an Asian American history lesson that we created in order to better share more about AAPI history and get people more acquainted with the story of Asians in America. We also take action by, we've done a few voter initiatives actually, and also by supporting different legislative actions like AB 101, the ethnic studies mandate that recently passed a few years ago in California. And we uplift youth voices through art, speech, and writing. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Celine Chin. I'm the founder and executive director of the Reclamation Project at 916. That area code being home to numerous people, many of us in this room. For my personal story, that signifies the immigrant communities of South Sacramento, which has raised me and which I'm proud to be raised by. We started when I was around 13 years old, was when it was founded, during a time of critical resource inequity and also this tumultuation, this need and wants for youth to demand our voice to be heard, to demand resources, but also seeking ways to take that agency and take that leadership for ourselves. Right now, almost 4 years of creating the Reclamation Project, we have established an unwavering mission of developing liberating education, community-based resource development, and also ways to forefront and mobilize young people, similar to CalCenter, to take action of their future in shaping our society.
What are the motivations that have led you to create and uphold these organizations over time, and how do you see the effects of these organizations play out in your community?
Yeah, so I founded Fridays for Future Sacramento when I was 13, and I'm 18 now, so it's been quite a bit. And I first really became cognizant of the climate crisis when I was 10 years old and traveled to India for the first time. That's where my dad was born and where my grandparents are from, but I had never been before. And as someone with asthma, I was really shocked by the sheer amount of air pollution and systemic inequity that I saw. Unlike my relatives who were forced to be in this really toxic, polluted environment, I had the luxury of going home to a clean, equitable community. And so I kept that with me for a really long time, but as a young person, I didn't believe that there was anything that I could do. And when I was 13 or 14, the Camp Fire ravaged Paradise, California, which I'm sure many of you remember, an area which is very close to here. And so once again, the air was just choked by pollution, and I regularly struggled to breathe. And that was really the impetus to founding Fridays for Future. And we've been able to see our impact play out through climate strikes and also through legislative efforts. So Fridays for Future and myself were involved in drafting and passing 3 local climate emergency declarations for the County of Sacramento, SMUD, and the city, which expedited carbon neutrality deadlines by as much as 15 years and created the Climate Emergency Task Force for the county, which was a body that I recently served on.
Thank you so much. So a little bit background about why we founded VRing Democracy. It's definitely a lot newer than all of the other organizations you see up here. But we started a little bit what I talked about earlier. We saw our grandparents grow, we were growing up in a time in which our grandparents weren't able to vote despite being a citizen. So when I was around 13, 14 years old when the 2020 election was happening, I used to really love dressing up as political candidates and people that you saw on the various TV stations. And I used to put all of these videos up on YouTube, which is where they're still living now, but don't look that up because that is not meant for anyone's eyes right now. But that's kind of where my love for civic engagement and civic passion happened, because I could see myself in those roles. But then kind of going back, and as the election happened, it was a really important election, as I'm sure all of you remember. But that is when my grandparents voted for the first time, and my grandmother is actually here today, so I'm super excited about that. But seeing that, having them both be citizens for 30 years and then voting for the first time was really impactful. And I wanted to be able to spread that civic engagement to other first-time voters, especially voters of immigrant communities. And through developing a VR headset, which we're set to present at different multicultural events in the next few months before the election, I'm really hoping that our software and our technology is able to bridge more marginalized communities to civic engagement.
Yeah, that's really cool what both of you are doing. Yeah, super excited to be here. My first experience with civic engagement, and I think just learning about politics as a whole and realizing that I actually had a voice, was at the very beginning of the pandemic back in 6th grade. I was learning about the rise in hate targeting the Asian American community and all the scapegoating that was happening towards Asian Americans, and I really wanted to say something about it, so I gave a very fumbled speech to my online assembly in 6th grade, and I realized then that people would still care what we had to say, even if it wasn't delivered in the best way. So then a year later in 7th grade, the issue was getting worse. I was seeing many of my community members be attacked just for being Asian, and I wanted to do more about it and also provide a platform for Asian American youth specifically to speak out. So me and my friends decided to organize a rally in Berkeley, California, where we had conversations about the rise in hate and talked about how it had been impacting us. We invited local Berkeley council members, and it was a really great day. We had over 1,200 people show up to the rally that day, and we really realized that this could actually go a lot further than we had ever imagined. So we started AAPI Youth Rising and have been doing work ever since with that. We also think that education is such an important thing because if we don't learn our histories, we will be, I guess, kind of doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And education can definitely be a big key to solving a lot of issues relating to racism, and getting people to learn about it in school is really important. So.
What I feel like what is so powerful about what was just said is that we see a core of our personal stories in the work that we do. And as for me personally, I believe that is what fundamentally holds that drive, that grit to continue organizing together. To share a little bit of myself, I, like many people in this room, come from a first-generation and low-income family. And that's what kind of started my idea and perspective of how we navigate this world. We're told and we're experiencing systems of oppression that tell us we don't have agency, that tell us we must live through this narrative of being fragmented, of having no say in this world because we are born into such and such history that we may not have been born into the best circumstances. I sought my work as a way to change that, but also involve a certain demographic of youth that I feel like we must prioritize in youth activism, and that is youth of color, youth of historically underserved and marginalized communities who must stand at the forefront of this work. And what keeps me going is that our team and the people that we interact with, both on the building end and the receiving end, involves those demographics so unwaveringly. And that's what keeps me committed, because our lived experiences are in the folds of the change that we want to see.
Well, before we move on, I just want to say those are all some really incredible answers. But on to the next question. Now that we do know some of your motivations, what do you want people in this room, especially people who are of older generations, a lot of whom are in this room, to know about what motivates younger generations, Gen Z, and what is important to Gen Z?
I think that there's this idea, especially coming from a lot of folks of older generations, that comes from a really lovely place. And that is that youth are super civically engaged, which is true, and that there are all of these bright leaders who are going to fix our problems and save us all, which is lovely, but I think that one of the things that is important to understand is that Gen Z and now Gen Alpha really require intergenerational mobilization. And also, we have the capacity to think about more than just TikTok trends. We are now voting. I'm going to be voting for the first time this November. And thank you. I'm very excited. But We care about foreign policy and we care about economic policy. We see these issues playing out in our communities, and you're not necessarily going to get our vote or gain our favor just by doing a little dance on social media, right? We have the ability to think critically, to mobilize for change, and we want to be treated as equals and partners in this kind of work.
I totally agree. I feel like I totally resonated with everything you said, and seeing ourselves on social media, seeing ourselves in the public sphere, there's a lot of emotions that come along with that. But being able to navigate that is something that you've expressed really well. But to that question, I think there are two things that I have, a statement on. But the first thing is that youth are not a monolith. A lot of times, older generations feel like the youth might act in a certain way, might act in a very quote-unquote radical position, but while this is true in some methods, a lot of times there are a lot of youth who are not being able to be brought into the building. For example, a couple of other civic events that we've attended with VRing Democracy, or even our event today, I love all the energy and passion that we have in this room, but we really do need more students. And so to be able to act not as a monolith and to be able to bring a diverse set of ideals and opinions and motivations into this room, which completely exists throughout Sacramento, California, the United States, it's really important that we're able to build an inclusive environment for students to be able to share their motivations, which are incredibly diverse with their community. Another thing that I really want older generations or anyone else to just understand about our generation and Gen Alpha, as Supriya entailed, was that we know the difference between being advocates and being activists. A lot of times, older generations always think that kids are always at the forefront, holding the megaphone. And while this is really cool and community organizing and youth is amazing, we do know to do a lot more than only hold the megaphone, and we can have really normal discussions with global leaders and anyone else who has to be, a more poised situation. We're really able and capable and excited to do all of that. So knowing the difference between being an activist and an advocate is something that we know and we've been practicing and really want to share with our community. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with what both of you are saying. Very relatable. Yeah. I think another big thing is, in spaces like this, you all really want to hear what we have to say, and you all are creating a space specifically for youth, and that's a really amazing thing. But I think more generally, we need to have a space or seat at the table for youth, no matter what. If it's something that's impacting us, like the climate crisis, or all these things are all going to impact us for years to come, and it's important that we have a seat at the table and we can express ourselves and express our perspectives, because otherwise our voices will get lost. So I think the biggest thing would just be to listen to your young people. We might have some good ideas, we might have some bad ideas, but it's important to, just listen to us and give us a seat at the table no matter what.
I feel like when it comes to intergenerational work, specifically when it has to do with civic engagement and voter engagement particularly, there are, multiple dynamics that we can establish, but there's two that are staunchly different. There's intergenerational projection, and there's intergenerational understanding, and let me tell you what I mean by this. So the Reclamation Project over the years have worked with and involved thousands of youth who were impacted by poverty, by trauma, by violence and trauma directly and generationally. So we have seen directly in our communities the disparity that exists, how there seems to be promises and there seems to be pillars at bay that preach equity, that preach solidarity,
but don't necessarily manifest into the material conditions of our community. And we see that gap existing. We see that contradiction existing, and we meddle with it every day. So we must understand, especially as adults who seek to involve youth, particularly youth who are the most involved, most impacted by these systems, is that there is a facade that we have to break. When it comes to elections, when it comes to voter engagement, end of the day, it is crucial and important, but we can't stand here and say that that is the only solution. We must build avenues and build methods for young people to organize and build spaces even after the ballot turnout, even after elections, because inevitably, at the end of the day, there are some youth who are still not getting the resources. So it is a perpetual journey that we continue to have to build, and it is something where we have to use all the tools that we can to be able to build that future, to be able to sit with that discomfort and say there are a variety of angles that we must approach it in a way that humanizes the lives of these youth the most. That perspective shifting and that versatility in how we organize, that is what is revolutionary, and that is how we gauge understanding for our young people.
I think I speak for everyone in here when I say that you all have left us, the audience, with a lot of amazing answers to think about. So the last question is, what is one last thing that you want to leave the audience with before we all go home tonight?
I think that especially as we have an election coming up, it's really important to try to incorporate more young people into the fold. I do think that there's a lot of apathy and the sense of irony that exists amongst a lot of members of my generation. And that's because there's this belief that politicians and that existing structures don't serve us. And that is true in a lot of cases, but it doesn't have to be. And so I think that by involving youth in organizing and electoral efforts and mutual aid, we can create sustainable change and keep people in that fight, as Celine mentioned, all year round.
Totally second that, thank you. I think the one thing that I would like to leave our audience with here today is just a sense of gratitude. One quote that I really love and I hope to live by is that we stand on the shoulders of giants. So none of us would be here today without all the people who came before us, our families, our generations before us, people who have worked in the spaces that we have for so long. And because of that, we become who the people that we are today. So like Supriya said, going into the election, it's really important not just to incorporate young people, but to also thank the people who paved the way for us to not just vote, but also to be able to be engaged in civic spaces in the first place. So yeah, just a big sense of gratitude.
I think we can all leave here today with a real sense of, I guess, hope for the future. I think that all the people here on the stage are going to go on to do amazing things, and I think that there's a lot to hope for. No matter what happens in November, obviously it will be greatly impactful, but I think that we can keep going forward with whatever efforts necessary, no matter what happens. And I think that right now we can always think about, it's always easy to think about the negatives of things or the harmful past, but I think that we can look to the future and make something even better.
And I'll try to keep it brief, but just a reminder that we are in the process of reimagination. And there's this quote that I live by civil rights activist Grace Lee Boggs, is that we have to reimagine not only institutions, but change in ourselves. And as we, and as adults and youth talk about collaboration, there is a very, very conscious effort that we must commit to, and that is shifting our perspective, and that is reimagining how the society is built, and reimagining an alternative that is just, that is for our liberation. So don't be afraid to reimagine.
That concludes our panel. So everyone, one last round of applause for our amazing youth voices. Thank you very much.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Solis. I'm a civic duty coordinator for Pro Youth and Families. And what that means is that I have the honor of overseeing a few boards and commissions, doing things as far as city council programs in Rancho Cordova, into overseeing youth commissions in Yolo County. So we're pretty involved with the region, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here and get involved with you guys and to witness more of our young leaders today. So thank you for having me very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Chavez. I'm the Communications and Public Affairs Director at Courage California and Courage California Institute. So with Courage California Institute, which is the hat I'm wearing today, is a C3 educational, voter education, civic engagement organization. We have some amazing, wonderful tools, such as our Know Your Power blog, which really helps inform people about how to engage with America. Not just like civically voting, but just everything legislative, the Supreme Court, councils, corporate funding, where your donation goes when you reply to those text messages. So we break it down, and then we also have a lot of great voter resources like voter registrations, county by county information, and we will also have our C3 voter guide that's coming out soon, and that will kind of list and break down all of California's propositions. So you'll get a lovely, you'll see that soon. It'll be everywhere. So keep an eye out for it. We really are here and excited to work with California's young people because, yeah, the more empowered you are, the better my retirement will be.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Lexi Tesh. Sorry, I'm getting used to the echo. My name is Lexi Tesh, and I'm here with the League of Women Voters of Sacramento County. Basically, what the League does is we work to defend democracy. So we do this by showing out to community events. We love doing voter registration. We're all about education and advocacy. So pretty much what we try to do is make democracy work. We understand that the system we currently have in place is not perfect, but how can we utilize what is accessible to us and encourage others to show out in the community, be civically engaged, whether that's voting or volunteering or just having conversations, I think is really important. So thank you for having us here tonight.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Noel Mora. Pronouns are he, him, his, and I am the Community Engagement, Community Partnership Coordinator at the Community Engagement Center at Sacramento State. And so a little bit about the Community Engagement Center. We really focus on providing students the opportunity, the connection, in collaboration with faculty and other staff on campus to go out to different community organizations and engage in experiential learning, which you might recognize as academic internships, and a lot of other different kinds of things, a lot of volunteering. And there's also a focus on collaborating with campus partners to have students engage in civic activities and connect with civic groups. A lot of my teammates are here today, so we do all of that work together. And I also wear a second hat outside of Sac State, which is a school board member in my neighborhood, Natomas Unified. So I'll let you know which hat I'm wearing, but I'm excited to talk about both. I can say from, the institutional perspective, students often will know about the federal and state level elections going on. Sometimes not so much the local. Sometimes they move to Sacramento, so aren't aware of what local issues and what local measures are at stake. So I think a lot of the time it's, and I can speak to when I was a youth organizer and a youth advocate, I think our youth panel spoke really in depth about a lot of the issues that they're facing now. But I remember really knowing what all of that work is leading towards and what it all culminates into and what it's going to look like in the long run was always front of mind for me and my colleagues, and it still is now. So I think just on being able to know what does this all translate into, especially when it comes to understanding power and political power. I'm gonna actually use my Noel hat, not my CEC hat or my hat, and just say, youth being able to understand who the folks that can make things happen are, and being able to work with those folks.
Great. I think that some of the most significant challenges in engaging youth today are trying to have, how do I say it? Basically, what I hear from my peers and my niece and my nephew who are 16 and 13 is that they're really frustrated with the system, and they basically don't think that their vote counts or that they don't have a voice. And, I loved hearing the youth panel and how it's important that they always have a seat at the table, and right now one of those gaps is that they are not always invited to the conversation. And so I think that, making sure that there are the spaces, not just for youth, but it's the spaces where everyone is working together. And being frustrated with the system, we've all been there. This is hard work. It is not easy, but I do believe that when there is better education when it comes to civic engagement, you will hear they have tons of opinions and totally want to be involved. It's just when there is that fear of not knowing or saying the wrong thing, it might discourage them. But, overall, conversation is conversation. So I think that, starting to bridge those gaps is really just starting to invite them to the conversation and listening to them, not just hearing them, okay, thank you, actually taking their words in and providing them with resources to have, take action and such. So, yeah.
That's so good. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, so I have a similar take. It's our fault. It's the adults, it's the institutions, it's lack of investment in youth ongoing. It's funding, it's organizations coming out and saying there's an election tomorrow, so I'm gonna fund you today to reach them and tell them what they care about. It's not ongoing. Youth need to be engaged the whole way through, constantly. And it's also something that has failed adults. Because myself, my older self, I was not engaged at a young age continuously. There is so much to learn, and yes, we have public education, but does it really teach us about the systems and the way it works and how to make change? This needs to be ongoing in order to not just engage the youth, but have a stronger tomorrow for when they're adults, and continued, because the stronger our youth are ongoing, the stronger democracy is going to be overall. So I feel, one, it's funding, consistent funding, and two, it's also mentorship. So not just listening, but mentoring, building leaders, listening and saying, what do you care about? Okay, now how do we think about this? What type of resources, opportunities can I show you, give you, so that you can look at solutions, so that you can go be the voice, so that you can go demand more, because everyone can demand more. You don't need to be a certain age to do that. You can start at your school board, you can go to your city council meetings, and you can just keep going on from there. So it's not just me giving you a seat at the table, it's me saying, you got the stuff to build a table too. Go bring some more friends and go make your own table. So it's investment and it's ongoing. And I think that is one of our biggest gaps and has been our biggest gap.
Thank you. I think that one of the biggest gaps that we face is that youth don't often see themselves in the picture. So connecting back to one of the programs that I mentioned earlier, Youth at City Council and Summer at City Hall, it's a program where I teach youth about local politics, but specifically how to engage with the city council and what kind of current events they can influence. And at the start of these programs, I ask a hypothetical question to them, and I ask the youth, with no wrong answers, I ask them, describe to me what a city council meeting looks like. And the words that I often hear them describe them as is, in their words, not mine, so I'm gonna air quote. They'll say lawyers, business people, or old people, right? And so I catch them there and I say, you guys didn't include yourselves in that description, right? And instead, that description they provided is what I would call the Hollywood City Council meeting, right? It's very police drama looking. It gives you a sense that only the grown-ups are in there and everything they're talking about is something that'll go over your heads, right? Not true. So what I like to do is encourage them to get hands-on. And actually, as a side note, I used to participate in Youth at City Council, and I'm gonna shout you out, CJ over here. That gentleman back here used to facilitate me as a youth and taught me some valuable things about how I could interact with the city as a youth. And so a lot about how we can close that gap is empower them to realize their potential, put themselves in that picture, not just at city council meetings, but there's also some boards and commissions that Pro Youth and Families, I myself, will facilitate as well. So it's very important to give them a platform, arm them with knowledge, and give them the space to advocate for youth needs. Because another block we have is the generational gap, that communication block that we might have and leading to misunderstanding. So those are some facets that I think we can do to address the gaps.
That's so good. We have about 5 minutes left, so let's be a little bit quicker with this next round, and then so we can get to the final question. You guys kind of already touched on this, but just wondering how your own personal experiences with engaging with youth closely, like you shared about your niece and nephew, and you shared about some of the youth that you work with, how working with them directly has shaped or transformed the way that you view advocacy and civic engagement, and if there's any other moment that stands out that you want to share.
Sure, I'll try to keep it within like 20 seconds then. A lot of what I see is how youth leverage technology. One of the more recent things that one of my city council groups did, for example, was that they utilized AI to see how a city can adopt it to become a smart city. So those are some things that weren't previously things that I've even had experience in, just because it didn't exist to the degree it does now. So some of the empowerment stays the same, right? That component of vocalizing will continue to happen, but the methodology sometimes evolves. Right there. Yeah.
So I'll try to be quick. A couple of things is, one, volunteerism is amazing. I love bringing people into volunteering. Volunteering for anything. It could be for an animal shelter, anything you care about, because eventually people are going to ask questions when funding gets cut, when programs get cut. And once you start understanding that the federal government can, yeah, they do what they do, but the local budget and the way things are funded here gets attention. So once you start getting involved with anything, that is like the perfect spoonful of sugar. My other thing is intergenerational mentorship is so necessary. We've been through it, learn from us, and take that torch.
I think that working with the youth and hearing them has definitely encouraged how I want to approach civic engagement work. I want to make it fun and simple overall. Who doesn't like that? Not just youth, but I think that making it engaging, relating it to their everyday lives, going back to my nephew and niece, Nasaya and Zayana, they are just some rock stars. They always want to ask questions. They want to be involved. Sometimes when we start talking about politics at Thanksgiving or whatever, they do want to stay at the table and hear about, the funding. Of course, sometimes it'll get a little boring and then they tune out, but when they realize the fundamental values of decision makers and how, overall money influences their everyday lives. I tell them, I'm like, the parks that you play at, those are, funded by decision makers. And so when you connect it like that, I think it gives them that aha moment and allows them to be engaged. And when making it fun and simple, I think that it will just help encourage a lot more people to get involved, and that's with all ages, not just youth. As you make it simple, I think it was great hearing the youth panel about just simplifying things, making it very visual. Sometimes those voter guides, I can't even sit and read the whole thing front to back. But if you show me a PowerPoint, I'm definitely locked in. So I think overall, working with the youth has really just encouraged continuing the hard work, and it just motivates me, so yeah.
Well, just to quickly wrap up and build on what's already been said, I think it's accepting that everybody's why is so different. And we heard that with the previous panel. I'm hearing that with my fellow panelists now. And so, to be able to build and co-build with youth and students a space where they can explore their why and all of us can further understand our why, I think it's something that we're constantly working on. And I know what my whys are to be civically involved, and they're not going to be the same as everybody else in this room. So, part of what the campus with the leadership of the CEC puts on is an annual civic engagement resource fair. I am doing a shameless plug. So it'll be October 8th. And it's bringing a lot of grassroots groups, actually, and some of the groups that are here on the stage to connect one-on-one with students, because something that I have really found to be true is that it's that one-on-one conversation that makes all the difference, to make sure that the idea turns into a thought or the passion turns into an action. Yeah, I'll do two positive shout outs to some of my colleagues. Our volunteer and program specialist at the CEC is planning the fair, Brooke. And we also have a civic engagement coordinator for the campus, Elisa, who's also back there, to really facilitate all of this excitement that's coming from people on campus, but also people from off campus, because they know that we have 30,000 students who mostly count as youth to engage. And I think a lot of that is still kind of manifesting, but in the next couple of months, I know that there will be a lot here. And I know that there have been previous years where there's also a lot of activity on this campus around the elections, and so I think everyone will definitely know about those opportunities.
A resource that we love sharing out is called vote411.org. So it is funded by the League's Education Fund, and basically it's super simple. You go to the site and then you type in your address, and once you do that, it's your personalized ballot. So everything that you will be voting for when it comes to candidates or propositions, it lays it out in a super simple way. It also lets you know where the candidates are getting their money from. So if you want to know more, go to vote411.org.
All right, we have a similar resource, but I'm not going to compete with that. So I'll tell you about a different one. If you go to couragescore.org, you can see how your legislator voted this last cycle. It's a scorecard, it's multi-issue. It has their whole legislative career listed, so you can go to any year. You can look by zip code, you can look up a name. So the issues you care about, if you really care about housing, you can see how your legislator voted and see how they scored on housing. And we also list tons of other scorecards because we are multi-purpose. We'll bring scorecards from organizations that are like single issues, so you can see how they scored on single issues. So that's a great resource. And I'm also just gonna shout out our TikTok. It's not ran by me. I'm not that age, but we do have people who are that age, and they're very good at it. And you can learn about all the legislative stuff, all the ballot stuff, and they break it down wonderfully. So Courage California on TikTok is great. It's entertaining. It's not me.
Thank you for sharing. All right, for Pro Youth and Families, also social media plug. If you follow @Pro Youth and Families on all major social media devices, we got those too. But on Pro Youth and Families front, there's a couple of other programs that we offer out too that I'd maybe like to discuss a bit more. One of which is based here in Sacramento called the Behavioral Health Youth Advisory Board, in which, once again, we give youth an official platform to advise Sacramento County on how we can push out holistic health resources, including working on some websites with the county and so on, to provide more accessible mental health resources for youth throughout the school districts and so on. We also are in the midst of developing another youth advisory board in Elk Grove School District, which will seek to garner more participation with after-school programs and providing support in those areas. And also, we have our Sacramento County Office of Ed Youth Fellowship Program, in which we also have interaction with the school board, Sac County Office of Education, when it comes to advising policies on what could be done within the realm of education for our youth. So those are a few things that we also provide through Pro Youth and Family.